Hello, listeners. This is the Doctors and Dollars podcast again, and thank you for joining us. This is season 1, episode 2. I am one of your hosts. I'm Vijay Kinney, and I am the editor of the Docs Up blog, and my co-host.
Hey everyone, this is Jordan Fry. I'm the founder of the Prudent Plastic Surgeon and Vijay's co-host.
Thank you for joining us, listeners, and thank you for joining us, Jordan. I will now move on to the actual topic of today's podcast, and this is a continuation of Jordan and me introducing ourselves to you guys. And today we're going to move on with a few more question and answers to each other. And my first question for Jordan is, what was the best decision you took which is not a professional or a financial decision in your life so far? There you are, Jordan, in the hot seat again.
That's obviously a great question. So kind of like in the personal tilt, I would definitely say like meeting and marrying my wife, because that's been such a huge part of my life. And, obviously I wouldn't even be here doing this if it wasn't for her, because she's really kind of always pushed me and encouraged me to follow my dreams, and kind of more even than that, like push me out of my comfort zone. Really, since when I met her was as a first year medical student. So going through and deciding to become a plastic surgeon and really going for that, and then going to NYU in New York for my training, and then, even just this transition that I just made, becoming and attending and moving, and her starting her job as a professor. So, and now we have 2 kids as well. So definitely she's been the best thing in my life. So she wins that decision. Best decision, even if you were to include professional and financial.
I'm sure you are going to have a long and happy married life with that answer. So that's a very good answer. I'm sure you mean it too. But
yeah. Oh, yeah.
The best non-professional and financial decision was probably moving to California for me. And it was, the weather over here, the culture over here, the food, the diversity of the population, all of those things. As an immigrant, I have really enjoyed that, and so I think moving to California was a great decision for me. Also, if you ask me, number 3, going into radiation oncology was a very important decision for me. Professionally and financially it was too, but it has really given me a lot of satisfaction and made me feel really fulfilled as a person. So those are my answers, Jordan, and I'm sticking with that story.
And what made you make the decision to move to California and away from academia? Did you have any sort of connection there, or like how did that, because that's a big decision, how did that come about?
I had absolutely no connection to California, and my only reason to move over here was I wanted to be in a warm and sunny place.
Yeah, well, I think that's awesome. And obviously you look back on that decision, that's, like you said, that's your second choice of best non-professional, non-financial decision. So that's awesome. And if anyone is not yet in Vijay's Facebook group, which is Docs Up, you can see he often posts like some pretty amazing pictures. He's a good photographer of, I'm assuming, but I think it's your hikes in California. So, it is really beautiful.
Right. Thank you for that compliment there, Jordan. Yes, I like hiking quite a bit, and I hike at least for 45 minutes to an hour every day, and sometimes more if I can get away with it, and if the days are longer. And I'm lucky enough to live in a neighborhood that has a bunch of horse trails, and I frequently carry my camera with me. And thank you for making the plug for my Facebook group. That's Docs Up, DOCSUPP. And I would like to make a plug for your Facebook group also, which is Prudent Plastic Surgeon. So those of you who are not on our respective Facebook groups, please join. So, moving on to the next question, what was the worst non-professional and non-financial decision you have made in your life?
It's tough for me to answer. And I've been thinking, because most of them do go back to that I look at sort of as like maybe professionally or financially leaning. And, I try to look back in the past, like, of course we've all made mistakes, but it's got me here. So I don't really look back on anything with too much regret.
I will tell you, Jordan, that was a trick question. The reason why that was a trick question is you will be able to answer that question, 10 to 15 years down the line when all your debts are gone, all your financial goals have been met or are on the way to being met, and you're well settled into your practice or your professional life or your career. And that's when you will look back and say, maybe I should have done this, and this, and this. And I'll tell you what my answer to that question is. I wish I had developed more interests outside of my professional life. And I like hiking, but I wish I had developed a sporting hobby, maybe golf or running marathons or something like that. And I wish I had also learned more about photography. And so these are questions you will ask yourself when you get 15 years plus into your career, and all those things that are that appear daunting and critical right now have all been passed. So that's going to be the beauty of our podcast, as we discussed, right? I mean, having these contrasting viewpoints is actually going to be fun for our listeners, I hope.
I think what you said makes a lot of sense, and also is like very courageous to say, in the sense, I bet you there's a lot of doctors and a lot of professionals in general that feel the same way, but have a very tough time admitting that to themselves. And I know, I obviously am earlier in my career, but even, as I look back on my training, I don't regret that I spent a lot of my energy, the majority of my energy, just becoming the best plastic surgeon that I could. But I do regret a little bit spending as much as I did, and at times neglecting other aspects of my well-being. And that's kind of what caught up with me towards the end a bit. So that's something that I really have to focus actively on now. And I think it's, especially with physicians, kind of an issue, because we're all to some degree perfectionists, and we want to be the best at what we're doing. And it's hard to sort of convince ourselves that, what's best for us as a doctor actually may be to take a step back sometimes and focus on ourselves as a person. So I definitely take to heart what you said.
Great. I'm glad you agree with me. Yeah, it does take a little bit of courage to admit that, but I think most of us admit it to ourselves. We just don't say it in public. So thank you. So the next question I have is, what is the best professional and or financial decision you made in your life? I think that's an easy answer. That's a gimme, a softball. Go for it, Jordan.
Yeah, that's pretty much a softball. But I'm gonna go, well, maybe a different direction than some people think, because I even still, like, with my blog and stuff, I get a lot of people commenting like, oh, well, you're a plastic surgeon, you can, plastic surgeons make a lot of money, and you can make up for all your mistakes, etc. But that is kind of part of what got me disillusioned at the end of my training to begin with, because everyone, like family, friends, was saying that, oh, you'll be fine once you're graduated and stuff. But I realized that wasn't really going to be the case. Like, I had a huge debt amount, probably more than most physicians, definitely way more than the average. Like, it was encroaching on like $500,000. It's less now because I've paid a lot off. But also, plastic surgeons like they're very susceptible to lifestyle creep, more than I think a lot of other physicians even, because the classic narrative is like, as a physician, oh, you have to live in a nice house and drive a nice car, because if not, people will, think you're not good at what you do or something silly like that. But I mean, plastic surgeons, just think of the reputation that they have based on like TV and stuff like that. So I've seen a lot of plastic surgeons overspend and, kind of live beyond their paycheck and kind of are living paycheck to paycheck. And that's something that no doctor at all should do, but certainly not plastic surgeons, who I think are now like the second or third highest paying specialty. So that is not the best financial decision I made, but the best financial decision I made was definitely just one night in New York City. I think it was in April, picking up the White Coat Investor book after my wife had already started reading it and had been telling me I needed to read it, and starting to read that, because that's what set this whole ball in motion. And now I found I really love finances, but more importantly, I found it's really not that hard to come up with a very simple formula as a doctor that can just put you on a path to financial success. And that path is over years, but for me, at least, once I just knew I was on that path, it made me feel so much better, because rather than just having this big sort of like, unclear kind of future financially, I had a plan. I knew we were going to be fine, and I was able to enjoy myself, enjoy the present more, and also just become a better doctor, because I was focusing more on the patients than worrying about like, how am I going to work my contract, or how am I going to figure my next contract out, or something like that, or how am I going to increase my RVUs or my compensation level. And unfortunately, I think a lot of doctors are focused on that because they don't have a financial plan, or they are unsure of their financial future. So that's where I'm going with that.
It's a great answer, Jordan, but you poured cold water on my image of the Beverly Hills plastic surgeon with a convertible Lamborghini and, drinking champagne and eating caviar and things like that. Dang it.
I know. Some of them may be like that. But the problem is not all of them.
Yeah, and you're certainly not one of them, so that's really great. So my answer, you answered two questions in one. My question was going to be, what's the best and the worst financial and professional decisions you have made in your life? And you answered both of them. And my answer to those two questions is, as far as the best decision I made professionally is to go into radiation oncology, because it is such a, or at least was a well-paying field, and starting to get very saturated now. And so I did well, and I also went out on my own in a manner of speaking, and I have actually been happy about that decision as well, professionally especially. Maybe not as much financially, because this is Southern California, and which leads me to the answer of the other half of that question, which is, what was the worst professional and financial decision I have made? And that is probably moving to Southern California. And somewhere down the line, you and I will have a podcast about geographic arbitrage. We will talk about, what maybe we'll do some mental math also about what it means to move to a high cost of living area. And the problem about the high cost of living area is not just the cost of living, or the cost of things like a home or whatever, chicken nuggets. The problem is the competition. There are so many people who want to live in this area, who are from every professional walk of life, including your own specialty, that you end up almost competing against yourself. And the only way, if you are in private practice a lot of times, is to undercut yourself, and you end up losing that advantage that you would have had in a slightly less desirable area. So from that point of view, though moving to Southern California was my best non-professional decision, or one of my best non-professional decisions, moving to Southern California was also my worst professional decision. So that's the twist for today, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I can understand that.
You I think did a good thing by moving to Buffalo, and we'll talk about that too at some point. But even though you call it a high tax state, from a cost of living perspective, Buffalo is nowhere close to to Manhattan or Long Island or those areas, correct?
Yeah, nowhere even close. It's definitely still high tax, but I mean, the cost of living is much, much lower. And it was, I mean, a little bit cheating for me because the decision to move here wasn't based solely on the geographic arbitrage, although that was a nice kind of side benefit, but obviously my family is from here. But it definitely helps. It definitely helps. But I think it's important too, like you were saying, like you could move to a low cost area, or you could move to Buffalo, and the decrease in the joy you get not being in that nice weather, not having those beautiful hiking grounds right near you, it may not be worth that. And that's totally valid. That happiness there is a price associated with that, and that can't be discounted. So there's obviously a lot to consider, and that's a whole nother discussion.
So to arrive at the last question for today's podcast, is a financial goal you have set for yourself in the next 5 years, and I'm not talking about paying off your school debt, which we have talked about in the last episode. But outside of that, what is a financial goal you have set for yourself?
Within 5 years, to be back to a net worth of at least zero, which I think we'll get to. I actually just calculated our net worth this past week, because I do it every 2 months or so. And it started out like negative 430,000, something like that. And we're already up to, listen to me, negative 189,000. And a big reason for that was because of our, thank you, because of our real estate investment property, and we were able to force a lot of appreciation with that. So the theoretical increase in the price of that in our asset column definitely drove things up. And we paid off our credit card debt. But so within 5 years, getting at least back to zero was a huge goal of ours.
And a non-financial goal for the next 5 years?
I want to coach my son's baseball team.
Good for you. Very nice.
Yeah. So that's my non-financial one.
Very nice. Very nice. And for me, the financial goal for the next 5 years is to be like Jordan Fry. Not to dial time back. No, but I am really impressed that you started out into real estate right away as soon as you graduated your training and started your first job. And looking back, I think it was one of the financial decisions I should have taken earlier as well. So for me, for the next 5 years, the financial goal is to get into real estate and multifamily real estate and to learn as much about it as I can over the next few months, and hopefully watch what happens to the market and jump in when the time is right, and investigate and evaluate markets in different parts of the country and so on and so forth, and see if I can get to a point where it becomes a true source of recurrent passive income. And so we'll talk more about that in future episodes. And as far as a non-financial goal is concerned, hopefully it comes much before the next 5 years are up, but to at least do 1 or 2 safaris, wildlife safaris in Africa. That's my non-financial goal.
That is awesome. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but going to like Africa and going on safari, that is like my dream trip as well. It's not exactly my wife's, but she said she will go with me. So yes, tack that onto mine, and also tack on getting VJ into real estate investing, because we're doing that.
All right. Thank you very much for having joined us, and stay tuned for the next one.